What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. I'm your host, your bastard of ceremonies, Reckless Rexx Ruger. That, of course, if you couldn't tell by the gangly chompers, is the Freddie Mercury puppet. We're back with another episode of Pod Scum, where only the cool kids come to chop it up with your boy Rexx Ruger, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. You know it, I know it, and the mirror never lies. And I'm enjoying the view. Made possible by the genetics of David Lee Roth and occasionally a squirt or two of this stuff. You won't ever look this good, but you can look pretty damn good. My guest is already here, so we're getting down to brass tacks and going right now, and I'm pumped for this one. I've been saying, Morris, I've been pumped for this one, man. I really have.
Hi.
I've really been pumped to have you on, man. And you know what? First of all, I just want to say, man, thank you for doing this, man. And I'm glad that you guys are getting all the acclaim that you're getting, man. Truly, man, what you created with this last album is phenomenal, man. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, just a breath of fresh air, man. You know, in a metal world that sometimes can get kind of stale, man. You know, it's nice when people are thinking outside the box. Now, who makes that correlation out of you guys in the band with introducing a psychedelic atmosphere to the death metal?
I would say all of us. The whole thing about it is that the band wouldn't be the band without any four of us, right? It's not like spearheaded by one individual, which a lot of people think that's how a lot of bands work, where it's like, oh, the one main songwriter, the guy, the front vocalist, the front guitar player, all that stuff. That's all antiquated, outdated ideas of how art actually works. People are lazy and they want to think that everything is attributed to one person, or in reality, to create something that's new and challenging the norms and something that's going to push art forward, you have to think outside of that box. So all of us, and I would say that for any type of question regarding, oh, well, how did you put the song together? Who's the main songwriter? Who's this? It's like, that's not a thing in this band. Okay.
It's truly collaborative with you guys. Yeah. That's nice to hear. I feel like that ought to be the way, you know, the cogs are turning in every band. I imagine when you're a musician, that must make creating music feel the best.
Certainly. I mean, having the free, and this takes time too. Like, and no knock on bands that do work in any specific way, where there's one person that writes everything and then brings it to the crew and then they play the parts, right? There's plenty of great records that have been made that way and continue to do so, but that is not how we operate. And giving ourselves the freedom to individually express ourselves within this format is part of what makes this band so special. And I think that we learned a lot in the last decade doing this, right?
Yeah.
And even from its demo stages, we all had ideas in the pot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you know, the most fulfilling version of what that could look like for me personally. And it only gets more so the more we grow together, the more we tear down these barriers of what we're afraid to show each other versus what we're not. You know, there'd be times in other bands I've played in where it's like, oh, I can't bring this riff to practice. They're going to think it's to this or to that.
Right.
But
right.
This is no longer the case, as is proven by Absolute Elsewhere, as is proven by Luminescent Bridge, and it's certainly proven by Time Wave Zero, which is all four of us the most collaborative we've ever been. So.
Yeah. When you get a claim like this, how does it affect you guys as musicians? Because obviously, like when you put an album like this out and it's getting the acclaim that it's getting, you know, it almost puts you in a position where people are like, "Holy shit! Now you set the bar so high, man, that you know, can you do something to, you know, to at least reach the same level or exceed it?"
Come on, like thinking about it in that terms, I get it. Another antiquated thing.
Right.
Thinking about your art in terms of what you're going to do next and what thing you're going to top next is not how the creative process works.
I love your answer.
I understand the idea of like a sophomore slump, or like someone being like, oh, I can't do this again this well. And that's because you don't want to do the same thing twice. After Star Spawn, we did not want to release Star Spawn Part 2. We did not want to release Hidden History Part 2. Anything Part 2. That seems like a pointless waste of time to me. When you made a statement, you made a statement. If it's truly fulfilled, you move on to do the next thing. So in terms of what we're going to do after Absolute Elsewhere, well, first of all, we already have some ideas and music in motion that I'm not going to reveal too much about.
Yeah, yeah. I would think you guys would though, because you do all seem so so prolific as creative guys.
Well, yes and no. I mean, this is the first time in Blood Incantation's history where we're so inspired by ourselves and what we did with Absolute Elsewhere that we can actually pump out music a lot faster and not wait 6 years for another record. You know what I mean? So there's definitely stuff in the pipeline that I think is going to turn heads even more than this record did. And really, this record blew the gates wide open for us in terms of like fan base and more people knowing about us. So it's interesting to think about what it's going to be perceived like, whatever it is we do next. And I'm excited for that. I'm not bogged down by that. I'm like, that's my well of inspiration right there, is to be like, okay, well, how much crazier can it even be?
Right.
And we have a vast, vast pool of music to pick from to make our sound, and you think of like classic 80s bands or even 90s bands, whatever, all this stuff that would like pump out like a 10 out of 10 record every year, right? We are approaching the ability to be able to do that again, because we don't have to grind and work a second or third job every single day. Like, we're not the richest people in the world, but now we're like able to actually do the band as our job and focus on making this thing as the best version of it that we can possibly see, and contributing to the conversation of what music means today and where it could go.
Yeah, and this has been a kind of a polarizing topic that has come up on the podcast several times. It still makes sense to put on an LP, right? A lot of people kind of think it's almost become like an EP world nowadays. Like, people just don't have that fucking attention span to drop a needle on an album and listen to it all the way through, or stream, however they listen to music.
Sure. I mean, anyone who's been following Blood Incantation for a while now knows that we're an album-oriented band, and I think a lot of that is coming back, given all the streaming services, all the like one single songs or EPs or even whatever. There's like it's very popular now to release a single as a video, right?
Yep.
And while I do think that's cool, I think what's even cooler is doing it in a way where you compile a bunch of stuff together after it's all a single and all this stuff. It's like the compilation idea, right? So that's what it used to be like in the 90s. People would release singles, or like a 7-inch single that would have maybe one song from the record coming up, but one song that's just a single on the 7-inch, right? And then eventually do a compilation LP, which I love that stuff. So I've like countless records like that. But
I
think in today's world, it's that's such a like, I feel like that's an easy excuse to be like, well, no one cares about a record anymore. And I feel like the people saying that are people who cannot make a record that's worth listening to entirely all the way.
Right.
So it's an easy cop-out to be like, well, people's attention spans, well, people's this, well, people's that. With so much out there.
Yeah. If you've got your ear with some good if you got your ear with some good shit, then that should be what matters, you know?
And, there's a great podcast about this called The Album Years that Steven Wilson does from Porcupine Tree.
Yeah.
He talks, it's him and his buddy Tim, used to be in a band together, but they discuss full-length records as a statement, and they go year by year by year. They've covered all sorts of ground now. It's existed for 3 seasons.
Comprehensive.
It's excellent. Yeah. And they discuss this very idea of like what it means for an album to be an album, a full-length LP that takes you on a journey from start to finish, that you sit down, you get to enjoy this whole package, the art, the lyrics, the message, etc.
Yeah.
And I do not think that is a dying format today. I think it had a slump, surely. I think the 80s ushered that in. And with the 90s, it kind of went 50-50. And then like in the aughts, it definitely became super passe. No one cared. Yep. But like I said, that wealth of knowledge, we're past all that now. There's so many insane collabs, all these things happening at once, that everything is nothing and nothing is everything. So to say that people don't have the attention span for that anymore, I don't think is necessarily true. I just think you have to do something worthwhile and present it in a way where it seems important. Like, why should someone care?
Well, I used to make time to listen to music, though, too. I mean, I'm 51 years old, so I am from an era where listening to full albums, man. But you have to make time and say, hey, I'm going to set some time to actually experience enjoying music, you know? I mean, if you've got that kind of time, then you should be able to get through almost any album nowadays. I mean, even full-length albums are only going like 40, 45 minutes. Long gone are the days of like a 75-minute Metallica album, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's also, that's not necessarily my cup of tea. I like a solid 30 to 42-minute long record. That's perfect. Slayer's Raining Blood is 29 minutes. That's like the ideal. Gorgoroth's Antichrist is also like 26 minutes long. And, people could consider that an EP these days. But, it depends on the style of music. It depends on what you're trying to portray. There's classical records that are 2 hours long that I'll listen to from start to finish. But you know, and yeah, in that sense, it's like, do you have time to read a book? You have time to watch a movie? To like feel any sort of art to bring into your life, then you have time to sit down and listen to a record. It doesn't necessarily need to be an LP, you know, although that, in my opinion, is the best version of it. You can stream the entire record and sit there and listen to it in your living room and like not do anything else.
Yeah.
A lot of people are driving when they're experiencing new music, they're cooking, they're doing whatever, but to like sit down, turn the lights off or dimly lit and just sit there and enjoy this audio format, whatever it is that you choose how to listen to it.
Yeah.
Just sit there and do nothing but listen.
Yeah, which is what you used to do. You'd come home and just pop on headphones and flop on a bed or flop on a chair somewhere, and you went for the whole ride all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, I do that still almost most nights of my life. You know, I come home with like countless records from tour, stuff I've never heard of before, blind buys or things I've been excited to like listen to.
Therapeutic than watching. It's much more therapeutic than watching TVs or movies. I think music. I know this firsthand from being my day job is as a nurse, and when I'm at the nursing home and they bring in musicians to play music or they do anything music oriented, regardless of people's age, it changes them. I see it all the time. It changes them.
Therapy is a very real thing. I mean, that's
like,
you know, a tried and true profession these days. Like people study to become that, and that's I think a very commendable job and not something out of the realm of possibility. Otherwise, I think I'd be interested in doing. But
now, obviously, we could sit here and talk about Blood Incantation, such an interesting project. But I don't want to not put some focus on the other stuff that you do, man. So I've got a list of things here. Maybe you could just elaborate on where you are with these particular projects. Spectral Voice. Oh
yeah, I mean, we just did 2 tours this year after about a touring hiatus of 4 or 5 years in the States. You know, we released a record as well that we all worked very hard on. It took a year to write. It's a slow process with that band because the music is very immersive and it's more of like a deep art project than it is a band, you know. And so the presentation of it, especially in the live format, really, we're not going to be playing festivals like party festivals during the daytime on some big stage because that's not what the vibe is for that. It needs its own atmosphere. No lights, fire, candles, all this stuff, you know, to present it how it needs to be without sacrifice, which is why a lot of people are like, oh, why don't you come play this or play that? It's like, no, you cannot provide what it is the environment asks for from this type of music. So it's worth it for us to not.
I respect that, man. Yeah, I mean, it's part of the show. I mean, it's got to be the right format and the right setting for it to pull it off.
But it's, you know, we're still pumping away and doing our thing, slow and steady. I don't know what else to really say about that. The last 2 tours we did were great. Yeah.
How about Homebody?
Homebody is a defunct project.
Okay. So
that's good.
Well, you know how I'm sure you know how the Encyclopedia Metallic can be on there, often inaccurate.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. We never like officially broke up, but it saw its end, its logical end, and both Michael and I are still very, very close friends. One of my oldest friends, like my brother, basically. But he's off doing his own thing, which is great. And I have a lot of leftover ideas from that project that I've actually been looking into forming a new band as a somewhat of a continuation of it, but more in a kind of like peace punk, post-punk kind of way. So, so keep a lookout for that. There's a couple ideas they're brewing that I'm trying to make happen this winter. So.
And what about the last one I have listed here is Stillborn Fawn?
Stillborn Fawn is also no longer a band. That was the first metal band I was in. It was a black metal band with my buddies Tyler and Tom that I actually joined. I did not form it, but I joined for the last full length. And prior to that, we had a record we recorded that we didn't like that never saw the light of day. So there's actually one unreleased Stillborn Fawn record that who knows, maybe someone will hear someday. But Norn, the last full length that was released on tape, 2015, I believe. I've actually been mulling it over in my head about doing a remix and seeing if there would be some interest in having an LP release version of it, because I do think it was a very good record, especially for that time. And there's a lot of potential with what it could sound like on wax and in terms of the layout and stuff. And I know both the other guys are interested in that as well. So definitely not dead in terms of ideas moving forward with a physical reissue, but a lot of that energy and type of black metal that I enjoy, I am putting into Nattergeist, which is my solo black metal band, which is currently active. I released a 7-inch a few years ago. I've got a a split coming out this year, and I'm working on the full length this winter as well, which is about halfway written, which will be released through Vaughn Records and Electric Assault, my buddy Henry. So that is moving forward with slow and steady speed as well.
And so you like to be in multiple projects? Like is there a comfortable number of bands? Like obviously out of those 4 projects, your focus seems to be on 2 of them though. But would you prefer to have your hand in a lot of different projects? Is that how you like to work?
Listen, as I'm like what I do is play guitar, right? I have a lot of ideas for lots of different things. I'm a musician. I like to, and my wife and I are starting a project as well, which is kind of this like neo-folk Renaissance.
Oh, that's cool.
Like early prog, like really acoustic prog kind of stuff. She's a great singer.
You have a name for that project?
Not as of yet. We're still figuring some things out, and and a lot of that here, like these kind of like side projects or smaller ideas, I can do all that at home. So this is what I spend my time doing when I'm not at band practice, like pumping away for a tour or writing some like megalithic insane album like Absolute Elsewhere.
Right.
Or working on stuff like Spectral Voice, which is like very full band oriented, just like deep darkness needs to be in this fucking cave, you know. A lot of this other stuff and like my solo like acoustic stuff, I have hundreds of hours of electronic music that's unreleased that my wife and I just listen to fall asleep. Like I make music for my own daily life. I'll like burn CDs and put them in my 5-disc changer and just walk around the house cooking, cleaning, whatever the music I made sometimes, you know, just to
that's cool.
Experience, you know, just what it would be like if this is all completely unrelated. No one knows. Maybe the world will probably never fucking hear this shit until I die or something. I don't know.
Right.
That's not really the point, you know.
It's been recorded for posterity's sake.
Exactly. And so a lot of this stuff, it has its inherent value, but like I'm not worried about it in the sense of like, I need to find a label. Someone needs to put this out. I need to make t-shirts for this. I need to post my Bandcamp links here or there. A lot of this stuff, if it's worth that time of day, that process comes naturally. And whether I create it or not is a whole other thing. How I'm feeling, what emotions I want to portray, what instrument I want to play, who I want to jam with. You know, a lot of these things are very just close to home, and kind of like the fact that I can do it in my little studio at home changes everything because there's no real pressure, right? So that's why this Water Guys full length has taken a while, but like in the scheme of things, that's part of how black metal works. You know what I mean? There's a lot of these bands from Norway, from the Territory Possessions crew, that like recorded a 7-inch fucking 12 years ago and are putting out a full length just now. And I understand why now, because life is complex. There's many things that happen, and to feel the same emotion you once did for a 7-inch to turn it into a full length, what that looks like, that progression, that changes as you get older. And with the course of time, I think you need that reflection to think about, okay, well, I don't want to do this kind of thing that I did for the last recording, but I want to keep the spirit of this band alive. But what is that? Right. And so I just think time and knowing oneself and growing as an individual is just as inherently important to making good art and good music as it is anything else. But yeah, you know, the main focus, obviously, Blood Incantation, that is our moving force in the world to show the entire world what we got. But all these other things, we're all in countless other bands. Those are projects for ourselves.
Yeah, I get it. And so with the acclaim that this album has gotten, obviously it's you know, album of the year, you know, people are just really putting it up on a pedestal. But stepping aside from your own amazing project, have there been some other bands out there that you particularly are a fan of? You know, like what's your listening trend? Or if you're around the house, are you tending to listen to old favorites, staples, or?
I mean, it bounces around, and that's always a hard question to answer. Like, let me look at what I just listened.
It's changing all the time.
Generally speaking, I've been listening to a lot of like kind of spiritual jazz lately. Along the lines of Alice Coltrane, but obviously there's a lot of, I mean, that's just like the basic outer layer of the onion. She's amazing. And also a lot of hard bop stuff, like obviously her husband's stuff, like John Coltrane with Wes Montgomery, Grant Green, all of these guitar players, but also stuff like Keith Jarrett, who my dad introduced me to a lot of this stuff when I was a kid. And it's taken a really long time for it to come full circle for me to understand why this music is so good.
I get it. I had the same thing.
That's also something I've always been interested in playing. So there's that whole other layer of just like, what other genre of music can I do? I was initially going to go to music school when I was a kid for jazz guitar and classical guitar, but it didn't work out, and it kind of left a chip on my shoulder. So I was just like, you know what, screw you guys. I can play better than all of you, so I'm just going to pursue that.
Well, I've seen some past interviews with you, though. You have an interesting past, though, man. Like your parents like got out of the USSR.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, my dad, he played in he played in like an army band and all this stuff where they did like Deep Purple covers and all sorts of shit that like the Iron Curtain allowed. Like, I hate Deep Purple for some reason, but then like banned the Beatles.
Yeah.
It's very just weird and discriminatory kind of shit. But he had a friend that would send him all these bootleg LPs that they were able to get through the border, and instruments and guitars. Obviously, all of this had to be left behind when they left, so there's no like I don't have like a collection of all the shit he used to have. Everything I have is what he got after they moved to Vermont. But yeah, but back to your question, it's like kind of what I've been listening to now in a modern sense. I mean, Andre 3000's most recent record is awesome, but it's great. I love it, but I think the people he's playing with, this guy named Carlos Nino and Nate Mercero, they are both at the forefront of this movement of kind of just like universal consciousness, spiritual jazz, free art music, and those guys have been killing it for a while now. And this has entered my my realm of understanding about like what all this is and these guys. And I've been chatting to Nate a lot lately about what music really means and what kind of art forms can be moved forward with these like combinations of sound, So it's not outside the realm of possibility that he and I would do something together. We spoke about it very briefly, but I'm quite interested in it. So it's tough modern stuff. His solo record's called Excellent Traveler. It was just released on Third Man Records on Jack White's label, and he's actually doing a string of release shows right now that I'm sure would be sick to see. But yeah.
And what's his name? Shout out his name again.
Let's see. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly because I've never actually heard it in person other than reading it. Nate Mercero, I think, or Mercero.
M-E-R-C?
Here, let me find that for you. Sorry, it's been a cold day.
I always like a good suggestion, man, especially for a talented guy, man. I'm
N-A-T-E, and the last name is M-E-R-C-E-R-E-A-U.
Okay. Yeah.
And this record that just came out is not his first solo record, although it's the most recent.
And this is jazz?
It's I would not necessarily call it jazz. It's like ambient, free, spiritual music. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. I don't
is it
know.
relaxing?
I don't want to put it in a box by any means. So all of these adjectives are kind of
right
loosely with a grain of salt, as you will. And it is relaxing, but it's also very engaging. It's a lot of just like nature sound, really cool musical structures and all this stuff. I highly recommend listening to it. Not necessarily to like fall asleep to or anything, but just like it's like half meditative, half active. But yeah, check it out. That's cool.
Put yourself
go down the wormhole of all the people he plays with. Like Laraji is on his record as well, which is like a new age master, right? Recording many times. So it's cool to just go down that rabbit hole and see what else is out there outside of the field of like strictly jazz, bebop, or metal, or rock, or pop, all this stuff. It's kind of just like it's pretty out there music. But I think a lot of people today, especially right now, need something new, and I think it's kind of
challenge them a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds good, but it's also like I think it's what the people need now.
Yeah. And how about touring? Because it's such a big part of the business, man. Is that a side of it that you like? Obviously, travel's not for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been on tour since I was like 19 or so. So I'm pretty used to like any type of situation life can throw at me in that sense. I've done just like shitty van, shitty car tours, everything up to a bandwagon, which we toured with Blood Incantation now. So been to Europe many times, seen the world through music, and I mean, I love it. It's like an inherent part of who I am and how I operate and how I know my closest friends, my brothers, essentially. And so it's not something we ever intend on stopping to do because it's just like that's the ultimate balance in life is being at home and being on tour. That's pretty much all I've known for my adult life. So I will surely continue to do so. And I love it.
I like the way you look at music, man. And how you really, how you break it down and really seem to understand it, at its core and at its essence, man. I think people would be curious to know what your own creative process is like. When you're going to create music, creatives are very different. There's people, I hear commonly people in the car getting ideas. I got to sing this into the phone, hum it into a phone, or at their day job. You also have creatives who can be disciplined and go into a room and say, I'm going to write, I'm going to create. What's the process like for you personally?
It's hard, I mean, like, okay, ultimately I'm a medium. I'm like trying to tap into a current of something that's already existed maybe in the future 3 million years from now. That's going back in time and using me as a medium to show people that it can be this way. I don't know. I mean, it's like hard to say what it is that possesses me to write the music that I write at that point in time. Sometimes it's completely by accident. I'm just sitting around like fiddling with the guitar, and I'll be just like all of a sudden playing the same thing over and over again. Like, oh, whoa, that's sick. I should just like memo that, bring it to the guys, flesh it out. Sometimes we're at practice and we're jamming in between like tuning sessions or whatever, and someone plays a riff. And we're like, wait, remember that? Let's expand on that. And so it's very much just part of the ebb and flow of the current of my time and place situation. There are times where I sit down, I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna try and hammer out ideas for this project or that project. But oftentimes the best ideas and the most really the ones that I think are the best and catchiest or pushing the whatever project forward are the most spontaneous ones. That's not to say I haven't sat down and be like, okay, I'm going to finish this song and then spend hours trying to do this thing, because I have, and it's worked out great. But it's almost always just like a flash and just happens. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Well, being creative, I imagine the rewarding part of it is that it isn't like sitting down and just hammering out a 9 to 5. You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? You know? And a lot of it, I think, you know, we talk about listening to music a lot in this conversation, and that's really a huge aspect of it. Like every record I have is research and development for what it is that music could possibly be. If you look at anyone in Blood Incantation and Spectral Voices record collection, you're going to see a slew of different genres, some super obscure shit you've never heard of in any different realm. And I think just like going down the rabbit hole of any musical genre will give you ideas that you can't even comprehend until you've like listened through this type of thing so many times to be like, oh, bam, I should do it like this. With this other thing that I already know how to do. So it's a lot of it is just, once again, time and retrospection to be like, what do I like? How do I like it? Why do I want to make this thing new? Or what am I writing here? Even if it's like an homage, doesn't necessarily always need to be new, right? That's another big thing. It doesn't always need to be new. It's just how you do it.
Right. And I just to get this right, I'm going to stick on the old man glasses here for a minute. But I'm wondering, man, if you can break down for people that might not know, but might be watching this interview and getting interested in your take on music and haven't explored Blood Incantation. Can you explain what you were doing on Absolute Elsewhere? Because it is 2 tracks, each one 20+ minutes. The tracks are in those sections or tablets. What is the gist of what people should take away from Absolute Elsewhere? Where are you guys coming from? What's it based off of? What's the concept there? I'd love to hear you explain it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the tablets, that was an afterthought.
Okay.
That's for streaming purposes solely. It's 2 songs.
Okay.
They're not on the record. They're not broken up. You listen to it, it's 2 pieces.
Right.
And that is a direct homage to how records used to be made in the 70s. There were these like epic prog opuses, you know what I mean? It's almost kind of like classical music, like all this linear kind of songwriting that just moves forward and develops a story, a tale,
right.
Stuff.
It's almost like they're not even songs, they're overtures.
Exactly. And there's codas where like it'll return to a theme, but it's not necessarily like A B A B C A B structure, like at all. This band has never been that. But ultimately speaking, I guess for layman's terms or anyone interested in it, that doesn't, you don't need to be steeped in the history of death metal or prog rock or any of this stuff to enjoy it, which is, I think, ultimately why the success of it is so high right now, is that a lot of people there's something for everyone in it. But the way I see it, it's basically like our Dark Side of the Moon. We tried to make a record that could transcend what it is we even thought 70s music could be like when it met extreme metal. And so it's like if it's basically like if extreme metal existed in the 70s, this is what it would be. That's the simplest form. And so if you're interested in any of that, and I know extreme metal can be an off-putting term for a lot of people, but I would implore someone to set their expectations aside.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree, and I think metalheads could see the 2 words annexed together, psychedelic and death metal, and instantly try to see that written by music journalists and try to turn it off in their brain or not be able to comprehend those 2 going together. But keep an open mind is what I would say.
Open mind, and there's a lot of we're by no means the first band to ever do this type of thing. We are the first band to do it the way we do it. There's only 4 of us on this earth.
Right.
But bands like Opeth are a huge inspiration.
Sure.
There's a band called Venom that's great, that doesn't exist anymore, from Germany. There's a deep well of inspiration that I can go on and on in terms of prog or extreme metal, but like psychedelic and progressive elements have existed in death metal for a long time, even in super evil shit like Morbid Angel. You know?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, as far as like the metalhead's perspective of being keep it true or whatever. It's like, oh, this is, I can't believe they're doing it. It's been done before. You were just like not aware of the fact that those were the elements these people were bringing in. Like, what do you think Trey was listening to? Like, all those guys love Pink Floyd and fucking 60s psychedelic rock and shit, because that's the evolution of music. That's when you learn to play guitar or learn to play the drums or whatever. This is the shit you listen to, you know? So yeah, that's been done before. It's just how we approached it, especially with having Tangerine Dream and this like the timeline, the linear progression from 70s cosmiche music into what we do. We're really, really into that specific type of prog rock, the super, super like in tune with the cosmos stuff.
Right,
you know, right. Blue, Klaus Schultz, Tangerine Dream, Ashra Temple, all that kind of stuff. And you know, I know for a fact that bands like Opeth are super inspired by that kind of stuff as well. So people often will lump us, the two bands, in the same conversation. You know,
and sometimes prog can be a scary term too, because that sounds intimidating and scares people off.
Yeah, I mean,
it's called prog
stuff. Ultimately, it's just like,
oh my god, prog and psychedelic. My mind's blown here. This can't be.
Yes, as far as like layman's terms, you know, extreme metal have existed in the 70s. Pink Floyd.
This is what it would sound like. Yeah. And so correct me for not having this right here in front of me, man, but for people that might not know, you guys are on a label.
Yeah, we're on Century Media Records, which is owned by Sony.
And when you have a widely successful album like this, man, what's the expectation or the trade-off, as it may be, with the record label? You know, how beneficial is it to turn an album like this in, man? Like, does a label want more, or
go into numbers here, any kind of stuff like that, but Century Media has been extremely supportive in terms of our vision and what we want to do with the band. Right. I mean, for God's sake, they were a major aspect of why we were able to record this in Germany in the first place. You know, they rented us a decent chunk of change to do this whole thing, and knowing that the return on it would be great. You know, just having this like trust relationship based on all this stuff. Yeah, it comes down to money, but also like Philip Schulte is a dear friend of ours, and he's high up on the totem pole of the hierarchy of who works there, and he's a dear friend. And we got to hang out and spend a lot of time with him when we were out in Berlin, including the other people that worked at the European office, who are all awesome. So we established this friendship relationship where it didn't really feel like we're working for a label or the label's working for us. It was just like, let's bring this to as many people as possible. And, you know, having major label distribution changes everything, because you can get it into more stores, you can get it into more eyes, you can get it into more hands. Like, and that's ultimately part of the goal, is to like, if you have such an important statement, you want people to hear it, right? Like, people have rallies and have thousands of people come to hear their whatever political views, artistic views, all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
What's the point of keeping something underground for underground's sake? If it's larger than life, then people need to know about it.
So what's the timeline like nowadays? Because I remember back in, and again, me being older, being back in the 80s and 90s, there used to be kind of like a formula. A band would put an album out, they would tour, that album would kind of, marinate for a while and be out there, and then you'd start following it up in like 2 or 3 years. Like how active will Blood Incantation be? Like, what's the right number? An album a year? An album every other year? Is there an answer to that?
I can really tell you, man. And especially with today's age and how things work, like you said, with the singles, and music videos, and all this stuff, we have a lot of ideas in the pipeline. A lot of like interesting collaborations I can't reveal quite yet, but lots of really cool ideas, and these ideas in ways that music has not been done before, especially with what we're doing. So I wouldn't put it in the box of an album a year or a tour cycle for this, a tour cycle for that. We will, of course, continue to tour Absolute Elsewhere. We already have 2 tours lined up. Before we return to America, we won't be for like another year or so, but we already have plans up to what that's going to look like in terms of an evening with Blood Incantation. We're also still intending on doing Time Wave Zero sets, expanding that repertoire of ideas in the band. And there's really a lot coming, but I cannot put it into a simple box that will give you a number as to what to expect, because that's not how we operate. And it's also not how any of us think about anything, because that stifles the process of what makes it interesting and new and creative.
Yeah.
I don't want
well,
to feel like I need to do this tour X amount of times a year, or feel like we need to put something out. But when it's right, it'll happen, and we have ideas in the pipeline, tours in the pipeline, and every day's a new day. Who knows what's going to be around the corner?
Well, I think an evening with Blood Incantation sounds like a fucking.
That will surely happen.
For sell.
Yeah. There's going to be some pretty insane events in North America.
Good.
A little over a year from now, we're working on, but that was up six.
Well, I can petition for my own area. I'm in upstate New York, so if I can be so bold as to lobby for a concert, possibly in our neck of the woods, would be nice.
Hey, actually, no, for real though. If you have a list of kind of like cool outlier venues, just like natural amphitheaters or like caves or something like that, or like Masonic temples, if you know of anything in the upstate New York area, shoot me a line, because we're putting together a list of kind of unconventional spots to do some interesting shit.
Unconventional. Okay, so not the typical rock club or dive bar or amphitheater or your small theater venue. You want to kind of someplace a little more abstract.
Oh,
yeah. Possibly even preferably outdoors.
It depends on the time of year, but I mean, just shoot me anything that comes to your mind. Let me know.
Okay. Cool. And so, what's the criteria though? It has to be someplace where it'd be viable for you guys to draw a decent crowd, though.
Yeah. Certainly. A place with like 50 people wouldn't be worth it, but something.
Yeah, right. And so, because you're such a studious guy when it comes to music, man, I'm curious, in the last, let's say 6 months to a year, what's something that you really feel like has grown in your guitar playing, or something that maybe you've been looking at an area where you want to grow?
Yeah. I can answer that, especially having done this tour now and playing Absolute Elsewhere in its entirety for the last month. And also recording it. There's a lot of people come up to you and be like, man, your solos on this record are so great. And also the one from Obliquity at the end of the metal track, the A side. I think a lot of this type of language I'm developing for myself and part of my personality, all the best guitarists, in my opinion, they're musicians. You hear one note, 1 second of them playing, you immediately know who it is.
Yeah.
That inflection or the way they do that, you can immediately tell, because it's something that they've created as part of their identity in terms of the musical world, right? And so that's always something I've aspired to do. And I finally feel like I'm getting some footing in terms of my understanding what that means for myself as a guitar player. And I think that specifically means space and melody, for the sake of moving the song forward, not shredding. And there's nothing wrong with shredding and playing really fast, but there's always going to be someone better than me. There's always going to be someone faster than me, someone more technically prowess, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And while I love listening to stuff like Yngwie Malmsteen and all that kind of like Stradivarius, tons of power metal shit, I love all that stuff. I cannot play like that. And I've accepted this fact for many years ago, because I don't need to be able to replicate the things that I love. And what's more important to me is to create a sense of identity in my playing. And I think with these solos that I've done the last couple of records, it's really starting to show where my interests lay in terms of note selection, rhythm, harmony, etc. And I think that, I like the space in between the notes. And when there is a time to do a sweep, I'll do one, or a pretty sloppy one, because I'm not the best at it. But
you like the idea of somebody saying, hey, that's Morris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not for like some egotistical whatever. Right. It's just because that's my language. I mean, that's how
Or in an appreciative way. People say, hey, I know his playing.
Like, that cannot change. It's part of my DNA. And these are structures and ideas within myself that I'm starting to understand, that like I can really build upon this in an interesting way. And it excites me. It's the music I want to hear. It's played how I want to hear it.
Well, as a guy who's been married 26 years himself, man, I'm curious, and I don't know how much you can elaborate on, but I picked up a couple minutes ago where you had talked about possibly doing a project with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like I said, it's like an at-home kind of just recording thing for ourselves. But
always remember, though, happy wife, happy life. If you're working with her, trust me. Yeah.
We're doing just fine. We actually just got married this past September. So
congratulations, man. Yeah. But acquiesce a little bit, man, and make sure that you're giving her space in the musical project, because, I mean, Jesus, man.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be mainly spearheaded by what it is that she thinks sounds good. Because I already play so many bands, you know what I mean? So,
well, I imagine that's making music on a different level, man. Like when you're making it with your friends and you have that camaraderie in a band, man. But connecting, man, like with your, essentially the person you're meant to be with. You know what I mean? You know, you could probably explore music pretty deeply on that level too.
Clearly, and that's something we're still like, figuring out. It's in its infantile stages. So, not much more I can really elaborate on that until we do more. So,
yeah.
But
so, well, you had mentioned something earlier, man. You like about a good album being like a certain amount of minutes. As a band, though, man, you know, and me not being a musician or in a band, is that something you guys consciously think about? Geez, we don't want the album to be, you know, more than, you know, this number.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, when writing an LP, you want to think about side A and side B. If you have numerous songs, how it's going to flow when someone flips the record, you know, because that changes things. And really the time for her, how much a 33 RPM record can be pressed or 45 RPM record can be pressed. You don't want to like extend those boundaries too much because it'll start to sound like shit. And for any physical format, including tape or wax related, these are definitely things that you need to keep in mind. That's why a lot of album oriented bands or records, they definitely take that into account. It's like part of the science of making it, right? But it's not something that should be bogging you down in terms of like the stopwatch or the clock. It's something you inherently know and just keep in the back of your mind. So when we do write music, it's always that idea is kind of back there, although it's not like delineating the creative process. But like, you know, if you got to like cut back a little bit or just do 4 bars less of this thing or increase this thing here, that can all be done after you've written the bulk of the material to be like, okay, maybe this end can be like chopped a little bit or something happened in the beginning, or we can include this little thing here to make it a little longer. So yeah, I mean, that's a definitely inherent part of the creative process. But I think much like playing to a metronome when you're practicing or stuff like that, these are things you keep in the back of your head to move forward and not focus on too much and let them kind of melt into the process instead of it being like this overarching thing.
I've also realized from talking to musicians on here too, and you know, I realize this over time. Great songs, great riffs, great solos, sure, all that stuff needed. But I'm starting to realize from talking to musicians, and I find this fascinating, and I'm sure you could speak to this because it seems like this would be something you guys would certainly be focusing on. But the sequencing and the arrangement and the cadence of an album is also very important too.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like reading a good book or watching a good movie. You need the depth and the ebb and flow. And actually what I wanted to get back to is you were asking about like playing this stuff or like as far as a guitar player goes, like learning new things and playing this record. There's a lot of like way more slower kind of chord parts on this album. And so when we were playing that live, you know, I'm used to just like balls to the wall, like blast beats and headbanging because a lot of music is still death metal. It was important to realize to be like, just take the time on stage to play it slowly and with feeling and not to just be like, it's weird if you're headbanging during the slow Pink Floyd part, right? You gotta feel the vibe of the music. And so as it went on, I was like, wait a minute, I don't need to be like, I can breathe, like enjoy this part and really play.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That translates into the vibe of how the record is made and how all these dynamics go hand in hand together. So.
I realize, man, that sometimes it isn't just those blast beats and how heavy or how much of a wall of sound something is, man. Yeah, I mean, heavy could take on many different forms.
Certainly, yeah.
I mean, it's like you listen to a band like Crowbar. It's slower, but the sound is thicker, but it's heavy in its own right.
I mean, there's heavy ambient music too. Like,
sure, yeah, absolutely. And so, you must be pretty proud, though, right? Though, I mean, I'm more wanting to tap into like what a musician feels like, because you are very humble and you approach the topic of music, you know, and the art of it with such respect, though, man. But inside, though, man, it must be a very proud, you know, crowning moment to create an album like this, though.
Certainly,
you must be enjoying it on many levels.
Definitely, and you know, it's coming home from this tour and getting this time to be at home during the holidays with family, etc. And kind of looking back. How crazy it was we were able to pull this off and really play it to its full extent, and we really did it. And I'm really proud of myself and the guys for seeing everything through and really being committed 200% to the cause. And you know, it's a big sacrifice to be in a band that has this opportunity. You know, a lot of people the paths have failed due to relationship problems, other things that keep tying them down at home or etc. But to really be able to be free and express yourself in this way, that's what I'm most proud of, and everyone involved in our life for like taking the chance and understanding that while we're gone, this is an important thing to do, and our family's understanding that it's like not the most lucrative business in the world.
Right.
But yeah, it's I am proud, and I'm proud of how far we've gone from playing floors and basements to doing a tour like this with fucking obelisks on stage and light production and everything moving forward, the plans we have in the future. It's like, this is really the beginning of this band to move into common consciousness and really continue to do something super cool. And I think that opening this gate was our hardest. It took like 12 years with this band alone, right? It's a long haul. Yeah. A lot of megalithic plans for the future that are super cool, that will sustain us financially and let us live. And I'm just proud of us for really cracking away all these years and sticking together, same lineup, same people, and just like building this network and base of trust, friendship, and support. Ultimately, that's what I'm most grateful for.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that, man. How rare it can be sometimes in music when you Google bands or their Wikipedia comes up and they have a revolving, a cavalcade of different members coming through, man. That is rare, man. They have all the same guys and you're all rowing in the same direction, man. You know what I mean? Like, band unity obviously, only strengthens the music.
Yeah, certainly. Like I said, it wouldn't be the same band without any one of us. So
yeah,
including Nicholas Malmquist from Hellas, who was doing all the keyboards on this tour, and he did all the keyboards on the record. He's equally as important to us as any one of us has been in the last however long the band has been together. Like, he's really
what's the mission statement if you were to do an evening with Blood Incantation and you're able to kind of portray this, this album or songs off of this album, man? What does an evening with Blood Incantation look like?
Yeah, the kind of the plan, what we wanted to do for a really long time is to, go to like cities that have pretty legendary theaters or cool unconventional spots and stuff like that, and do a 2-night thing where one night would be a Time Wave Zero set plus special guest impromptu jam that goes on for however long, and the second night would be a proper heavy metal show and some like classic theater. And so it would really be like a weekend with Blood Incantation or some sort of that type of echelon of almost like academic style music like Lincoln Center or all this stuff, and it's to portray this air of it's more than just a show, it's an event. And I think that's a really, really important thing that a lot of my favorite bands do. When you go see Iron Maiden, it's an event. You know what to expect. You know what song it's going to play before they go on. It's kind of a tradition. It's almost like a religion. And so to have this kind of staying power, I think that's really important to develop some sort of like a unity in terms of the event. And it's like you go to a Tool show and you expect this insane lighting rig and all this crazy stuff. That's not like because the music is so lackluster they need this. It's just all adds to this extra thing that's so epic. And so we're building towards this like immersive Blood Incantation live experience that you can go see them play this insane ambient 70s style krautrock progressive music one night that with lasers and all this shit, and then the next night you go and it's like fucking Mesopotamia on stage with obelisks and fucking ancient structures everywhere with this crazy death metal progressive 70s rock playing, So
I mean, that's an amazing idea. And should Blabbermouth dissect any of this interview, please? Morris did not say that Blood Incantation was starting its own fucking festival, man. He just said an opening band in a weekend. He said a weekend.
Blood Incantation Festival is a very real thing. He just
said come and spend a weekend with Blood Incantation. Let's not put the cart before the proverbial horse here. But certainly 2 nights of Blood Incantation, man, would be absolutely awesome. And I love that you're coming at it from, attacking it from 2 different angles. That would make for a very interesting
since the Time Wave Zero, the whole idea was put into motion. It's like we can do both. We can score movies too, whatever, all of this stuff. And it's the sonic realm of possibility with this band is pretty much endless. So it's really pretty exciting.
Well, I'm glad for you, man. Congratulations, man. I look forward to more stuff from you guys, man. I mean, it is really an absolute joy, to be in 2024 and being 51 years old. I'll cop to being an old stodgy fuck and finding finding some fresh death metal, man, that actually fucking excites me and doesn't feel like something that I've been hearing for the last, 30 years,
I
So,
yeah. I mean, it means a lot to me as a person. I love all the classic bands, and it's, getting that type of accolade. It does mean a lot.
Yeah, I'm glad, man. This was a lot of fun, man. I could sit here and pick your brain all night. You're a really interesting guy, man. I'm glad we're in touch now, man. Keep in touch. We'll definitely do this again.
Yeah. And send me a list of venues if anything comes to mind.
I will. I'm going to look. Listen, man, if I could be the hero of my area and I can pull off getting blood anywhere near here, man, I mean, come on, man. I at least got to go right to the top, or I at least got to crack the top 5 of all-time fans. I mean, come on. It deserves something, man, right?
Surely,
yeah. No, seriously, anything that I can find out, man, I'll pass along to you. And this was a lot of fun. It was a pleasure, man. Thank you.
I'm glad we made the time for it.
Yeah.
And, thanks for being so patient.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for the great conversation. Thanks, Morris. Good talking to you, brother. All right, later, man.
Yeah.
There he goes, folks. What an interesting cat and what an interesting band. I mean, I don't know if there's any metal fans out there that haven't tapped into Absolute Elsewhere. Easily, probably the album of the year by Blood Incantation. Really amazing. Really a band that is coming at death metal from a super interesting approach, man. Mixing elements of psychedelic and atmospheric. And just, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't be the one to describe it, not being a musician. I guess go back and play it and keep dissecting what Morris said. And, because he's got some really interesting takes and some great insight and opinions on music and the process and the art of making music. But what they've pulled off with Absolute Elsewhere, man, congratulations to them, man. And, publications out there have it, album of the year or always, in that top 3, revolving list from different people, man. But it's a crowning achievement, man. Congratulations. The boys should be really proud, man. They are really very prolific in the creative sense, man. And upward and onward for those guys, man. I mean, God only knows what they're going to do, man. But just talking to Morris, really, if you're a Blood Incantation or an extreme metal fan in general, those guys are going to keep, folding in interesting layers, into this whole recipe of death metal. So it's exciting to see what those guys are going to do, man. And really great talking with Morris Kolontyrsky. I'm not going to fuck up his name. Kolontyrsky. I wanted to bounce it off him, but I watched a couple of interviews and even heard him introduce himself. So Morris Kolontyrsky. I hope I'm saying his name right, man. But what an amazing conversation, man. An amazing player, man. Amazing guitar player. Blood Incantation. Probably the band and the album of the year, man. And, this sounds like it's one of those crowns they're going to continue to defend, man, because every time they put something out, it's going to be interesting and boundary pushing, and it's going to have them in the conversation as, hey, these guys have made the most interesting piece of art this year. So you got to salute them for that. Make sure to stay tapped in to Blood Incantation. Show them some love, show them some support, man. Be tapped into what they're doing, man, because it's interesting shit. Be tapped into what I'm doing. Make sure to like and follow PodScum on Facebook and subscribe, and hit the notification bell on this channel to stay tapped in. This is where the cool kids come to chop it up with your boy Rexx Ruger, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. The end of another interview, man. I'm going to admire the view, man. Damn, it's still fucking good. It's good to have rock star genetics, folks. I got them. You don't. Try to hate. Or don't hate, I should say. Congratulate. It's my own line and I fucked it up, man. That's the edibles talking, folks. This episode was brought to you by edibles, which hell opened up my mind and expanded it, man, and made my conversation with Morris even all that much more enlightening. I'd like to hear a guy talk like that and be so passionate and embrace music for its, when you strip it down and you enjoy it for its bare essentials, man, what we really delve into it for, just the happiness and the joy it brings us. So great conversation, man. Hope you guys liked it, man. Tap in, man. Stay tapped in, man. Don't be like the Freddie Mercury puppet, man. A mouthful of fucking teeth back there. Reach out on Facebook if there's somebody that you want to see on here that I can run down, or somebody that I've had, or somebody you never want to fucking see again. Shout out, let me know. I'm very receptive on Facebook, man. And of course, stay tapped into the channel right here. This is where you really need to be, right here. This is where it all goes down. But follow Facebook. That's where you'll find out updates on new episodes and who I'm having on said episodes. And one thing, they're always going to be awesome because I'm going to have awesome guests and I'm going to be in them. So they're going to be fucking awesome. So that being said, let me remind you guys what I always say when I end these things, and that is, remember to take it easy and keep it sleazy.